Today we're going over our top 5 reptiles from the NARBC Tinley Park show of 2024 that are not ball pythons. At number 5 from Aratonic would just be some day geckos, right? Except for the fact that there's 3 adult day geckos sitting on my hand. Now, maybe you know something I don't, but I was always under the impression and being told that day geckos are look-only animals. They're beautiful, but they are not handleable. They are way too fast and they are way too wild, and they will drop their tail and they will get away from you and you'll never find them again, except for maybe every so often scurrying across the ceiling or the wall. But I'm holding 3 adults, and the breeder brings out a baby who is nearly just as tame as these as well. My mind was blown here. I love being surprised, and this, honestly, even though it's our number 5, might be the biggest surprise at the show for me in terms of just something that blew my expectations. I was always under the impression that day geckos are beautiful creatures that are not handleable and should never be touched, but this proves that this is not the case. If you work with day geckos and give them some time and love that they need, they're going to be more than just an artistic, beautiful piece for you. They're going to be a companion animal, at least to some level. I held these 3 day geckos for a considerable amount of time, and the breeder wasn't worried in any extent. At one point, the small little gecko kind of, I wouldn't say gets away from him, but just kind of jumps down, and with no worry at all, this guy, as cool as a cucumber, was able to just get down and pick it up. No worries. He is a day gecko whisperer, and I think that because of that, these day geckos, specifically from this breeder, are an amazing animal from the Tinley Park NARBC show because of the perception that it blew out of my brain of what these animals are and what they can be for you. At number 4 from Tom Harbing Reptiles would be this Arctic sunburst hognose snake. As you know, I'm starting to get into hognoses now, and sunburst is essentially one of the projects I've chosen to go after. I think the albinos are very intense. They actually dance with the color red, but Arctic is a codominant in hognoses, meaning that it can get a super form. Sunburst is a combination of 2 recessives. They are not allelic, they are just a visual albino and a visual sable. Sable is a very dark gene, which actually makes it kind of look like the eastern hognose snakes, in my opinion. And albino is, well, somewhat similar to how albinos look in ball pythons. I think that the albinos for hognoses, quite frankly, have a nicer color palette. They are more orangey, dancing with reds, and there's a lot more polygenic traits to hognoses that I've noticed. There are more than you would think with ball pythons, like the Barnhart Black Pastel, but I find that the hognose community has embraced polygenic forms or bloodlines, so to speak, more than the ball python community has, and I noticed a major difference even in mine. There's like purple line and red line types. I really love the albinos a lot, and this one here is just so incredibly intense. The Arctic ends up adding just this extra oomph to add more intense coloring. If you're ever in the market for an animal, ball python or hognose, or just want to talk to someone that's trustable and knows what they're talking about, talk to Tom. He's a really cool individual. He's also a vet, believe it or not, so he knows a thing or two. At number 3 from Joe Hupp Geckos would be these Australian barking geckos. I have been waiting for him to bring these barking geckos back to the show for a very long time. One year we saw them and I wanted to put them in the video. I came back to film these and they were gone. They were sold. And ever since then I've been asking every year, twice a year, because March and October, and there had never been any until now. I think these are awesome, and these look a lot like leopard geckos because they are very similar to it. They're a gecko with an eyelid. They're a gecko that can blink. They have a very similar body structure. Geckos are all capable of making noise. Most of them just screech or scream, or in the case of the tokay gecko, says its name like some sort of Pokemon. But these geckos bark. What else can be said? It's a little reptile this size that barks at you when it's irritated with you. The only unfortunate thing about noises that these lizards make is that they're not making them because they're trying to have fun. They're making them because they're stressed out or scared. So while this is really cool and sometimes cute, it's not something you should try and court, but this animal's cool more than just how it barks. There's a lot of cool patterns to this. Its tail has a lot of cool patterns on it, and what I really like about its back is that it has almost like the sun starting to go down and the sunset's still there, but that weird point during the day where you can still see the stars starting to come out and the sunset at the same time. I think it's really cool and unique, and it barks. Enough said. At number 2 from Juggernaut Reptiles would be this Eastern Sanzinia. I really like this animal for a lot of different reasons. It looks like a rattlesnake in a way. The pattern, the face with the big jowls, so to speak, it really gives me these vibes of a venomous animal, but it's not. The color and the pattern is a very moss green. And a lot of people think of green when they think of snakes, but when dealing with ball pythons or hognoses and stuff like that, you know that green is actually kind of in short supply for a lot of these animals. This is a moss green. It looks like an army fatigue along the pattern of this animal, honestly. You can see how this would suit the animal for camouflage in the wild. I really like how the eyes look, and I don't know if it's just a trick, but they're like silvery and almost seem to reflect the green themselves. Almost like a silver like little button on it. One of my favorite snakes in the world is a Gavoon viper. They have a really cool leaf-like pattern. However, they're deadly venomous. I will never ever own one, but I could own something like this if I wanted. It is really cool. It's really unique. It really reminds you that there's so many awesome and unique animals out there beyond what your normal horizons offer. I really would like to research and learn more about this animal just from the way it looks. Now, is it something that's easy to keep? I have not done any research on this animal. I just know it's really cool and I really like it. Before we get into our top pick, I wanted to go over our honorable mentions. Now, I've said before, one of my rules is that I don't like repeat winners. But with that being said, I can't not help but to mention it again. So I'm gonna put it in our honorable mentions, even though it was our number 1 pick from last year's NARBC show. And that would be this Blizzard Morph all-white crested gecko from the Bug Plug. I mean, obviously this is awesome to have an all-white, leucistic, black-eyed animal that is just so cool and unique. Something to bring a new, exciting project into the crested gecko world. But one thing I didn't notice when we talked about this last year is that this animal is almost ghostly. You can quite literally see its guts. I didn't think about that, maybe because it was smaller, maybe because I was just a little more in awe at the time, but looking at it this year and the smaller baby that has been created since then as well, you can see through it. Now, some people might be grossed out by that, but I don't think it's in such a way that you're seeing them in incredible detail. You just can kind of see where they are. It gives this ghostly look. I don't know if that'll stay with it as it grows, but the one has gotten considerably bigger already, and it still is something that you can kind of see through. Unbelievably cool and unique animal that I always love to see whenever I go to these shows. I can't wait for 10 or 20 years from now when it's affordable and I can get one. Our next honorable mention from the rep room would be this Paradox Day Gecko. We've shown off in our top 5 before the rep room's animals in general. They're morphs. Obviously, I do not know enough about day geckos to know if there's morphs or if it is a line bred type trait, but I love the colors on these anyways. But the Paradox, these blacks being brought in, are just so cool and unique. I had a hard time not showing you all this. For our next honorable mention would be the Gera marganetta here. They're also known as the Helmerian giant gecko, but I really like the contrast, the very light colors, the seemingly starry type speckled pattern that kind of goes along this. And to me, it has a short snout and it looks like a pug, and I think that's cool. It also happens to be the first captive bred one in the United States, by the way, this one here. So that kind of speaks for something, because this represents a brand new animal being introduced into captive breeding, which is really the way to go. It allows you to enjoy these animals without hurting the environment and still preserving them as a conservationist. And number 1 from Pangea would be Patient Zero. This is a crested gecko, and I'm almost positive he's Paradox of some sort. I do not know if this is something that is reproducible. The animal itself is just super incredibly unique. It looks like some sort of genetic skin issue, which doesn't really affect its health, I would imagine, but just affects the way it looks. Like the golden coloration in and of itself, it has a lot of blotches and patterns on it. Like there's a light golden to it, there's a darker color to it as well, but then you've got the blotches of white coming in along with those nearly jet black eyes. It makes an animal that is so incredibly unique that Patient Zero is such a perfect name for it, because it almost looks like some sort of medical thingy or the first of its kind. You can take it in a lot of different ways, but there's so much about this animal that's so cool, because even though it's random, you get these ideas of a little pattern off of its snout. It creates this cool little white pattern in between and a little dot right above its nose. It looks like it was kind of almost planned in a way. but at the same time being absolutely chaotic. It is the most unique individual crested gecko out there. It's incredible, it's beautiful. I hope it's reproducible, but if it isn't, it makes it even more unique, and it makes it so that you should appreciate something so cool when it comes along even more. Hope you enjoyed our picks. Did you see anything else there that you would have put in the top 5? Let us know in the comments below, and if you wanted to check out the entire walkthrough of all of the NARBC show, you can see that right here.